A couple of weeks ago, Naomi Osaka announced via social media that she was not going to do any press at the French Open. She cited mental health concerns and some other concerns, and talked about how kind of the aggressiveness of the questions that take place right after games, and noted that she was going to talk to, she was going to do press, but that it was going to be with some reporters that she had a personal relationship with. After that, the French fined her $15,000. The four other majors, Wimbledon, the U.S. Open, the Australian, then got involved and said there would be, if Naomi or other players tried to not do press during their tournaments, that there could possibly be greater consequences, including fines and bans. Naomi ended up pulling out of the French, and she just recently pulled out of the Berlin WTA event, which is more of a warm-up tournament for Wimbledon. This whole story has sparked a conversation that is really nuanced and really complicated. It involves mental health. It involves athlete access. Of course, race and gender, because we're talking about world tennis, which is an extremely white sport that has in the past certainly favored the men's game over the women's game. All of that is involved. Renee, what do you think of this situation and the conversations around it?
I think that it's time, and we talk about coming off of that 2020 year where we all need an asterisk for 2020. I think that athletes just started to look around. When you're looking around, when you start to do housekeeping, basically, and America had to do some housekeeping last year, there was a lot of stuff wrong in our household. And we realized that things aren't done right in our household. And we realized we want things to be done better. Well, athletes did the same thing when it came to sports. And athletes started to speak out like, well, if we're going to fix some stuff in America, let's fix some stuff in the sports world as well. And you started to see athletes not only just saying that their sports teams need to support them, but they took it a step further in the NBA bubble and said their owners, their management needs to make sure that they're doing things that support social justice. And so that was changing sports. You see it now, even still in the playoffs, NBA on TNT, they have a Black Lives Matter sign there. That's new. That happened in 2020. This thing that athletes have dealt with for a long time, it's mental health. Mental health is something that's been just a huge stigma. I remember when Kevin Love came out and talked about his mental health struggles, and it was a shocker. People couldn't believe that an athlete had mental issues to begin with. And so then when Naomi Osaka comes out and she says it the first time, she says, you know what? Basically, I'm paraphrasing here. She wanted to protect her peace. She just wanted to focus on the sport, and she wanted to win. She wanted to go out there, compete, and win. And she felt like she wanted to do everything that would help her be in that mindset. No one really respected when she said that. When I say no one, I mean the directors of the Grand Slam that got themselves together and thought that they would try to threaten this woman into doing media or try to pressure her into doing media. It backfired, because then she elaborated when she decided to opt out of the tournament. She said, okay, I never wanted to be a distraction, but I struggled with depression in 2018. Now, a lot of people thought that she would have been, in 2018, you would have thought she was on top of the world. She's beating Serena, like one of the best in the game. She talked about she was battling depression then. So then now everybody wants to be understanding. No, believe athletes the first time. She already said she was trying to keep her mind together, but then then people didn't want to accept it because they don't want to accept that athletes have the same issues that everyday people have. And so for me, I love it. Remember, a Fox News host told LeBron James, one of the most well-known, greatest athletes of all time, to shut up and dribble. That started a whole brand because LeBron is too big to say that to. Naomi Osaka is the same. She's too big for those grand slams to think that they could threaten her and make her do something that she doesn't think is good for her mentals. I know that was a tangent, but I feel really strongly about that. I even went on and I tweeted that she needs to start the Osaka Open then, and she creates her own where it's designed for the best players to go there to be treated a certain way. She never said that she didn't ever want to do media again. She said that it needs to change. Maybe what if you ask the questions ahead of time? There's a moderator that knows what's going to be asked. You still get your questions. You still get your answers live. from the player. But things need to change because we do know that there's media members that are not responsible. Everyone's not responsible. Some do things to try to be spicy, rude, get under the player's skin. So I just think at this point in time, athletes have had enough when it comes to everything. Naomi Osaka, I am 100% behind anything that she's doing because it's not easy. I opted out. I'm someone that opted out as well. It's not easy, so I'm behind her.
I think that you hit on a lot of points, and I think that there are a lot of things going on with this story, and a lot of them are unique to tennis. You mentioned that, certainly there were any number of tweaks to the system that that Roland Garros could have made, the French Open could have made, including moderators, etc. But the thing about tennis is it's an individual sport, and the players have so much less leverage than they would in any other kind of sport, a team sport, because the players are just naturally against each other. Naomi Osaka drops out. If I'm her competitor, I'm thinking good. You know what I mean? Like, even though I might support what she's saying. So that structurally is just so hard. And the other thing is tennis, again, it's like 81% white.
Yeah.
Most tennis fans are wealthy white people. And I think that it is not surprising to me that the French and that the majors acted like this, because they have never been checked. They have never had to answer to criticism or anything. And that the fact that they would respond with this, it seems short-sighted, but it also makes complete sense considering the demo that they deal with. I mean, this is like Rolex is a major, sponsor of these tournaments, of Wimbledon. You look on the sideline, and it's like Rolex. This is the people who watch this tournament, or people who are like, I'm going to drop $30,000 on a watch. So it's just a different mindset. And now mental health is just a conversation that I think people in general are not ready to have, and don't know how to have, and don't know how to understand. And I think that's doubly true for sports, where the way we talk about sports is people overcoming adversity, and look how strong they were in that situation. And you go to the foul line and people are yelling at you, and you hit the ice cold-blooded big shot to overcome that pressure. And I think all that kind of discourse makes it really hard to have a mental health conversation within sports. And I think you're exactly right. It's so brave when Kevin Love talked about it, when Paul George talked about it, when Naomi talked about it. And I think the thing that we need to remember is, as hard as it is for them to have this conversation, and brave of them to do it, and when somebody cites mental health, we just, bottom line, need to believe them. It's even harder for regular people at their regular jobs, to have that conversation with their bosses, with their management, because there is no spotlight on them. And it is such a misunderstood thing. I think, like, when I was reading her final statement after pulling out, where she was like, I've struggled with depression. And then she goes on to say that she's also an introvert. I kept thinking that people who aren't checked in with mental health, who aren't like up on understanding what it really means to say a person has mental health issues, they'll read that statement and say, oh, you're introverted, just get over it, like, you're paid millions of dollars, just come out of your shell. They can't understand what that really means. To struggle with depression is to have an illness, a chronic illness that you are dealing with. So there's that issue. Then there is the fact that with a lot of these press conferences for tennis tournaments, you're dealing with press that the athlete and the reporter often don't speak the same native language. So you've got a language barrier thing. So is this person being rude, or are they just struggling with whatever language they're trying to ask me a question in? Then you have the racial implications, because again, it's a very white sport, and we've seen the way the sport has treated Serena, who is the greatest winner in the sport's history. And they feel comfortable treating her in a type of way. You think of the controversy with that happened semi-recently where Serena was being coached from the stands, a thing that's not allowed, but a thing that also happens all the time, where a coach is giving signals to a player and they never call it. So all those things together make this an extremely fascinating and important discussion. And then again, I had friends who are journalists, right, who said, well, the thing that Naomi wants, if that happens in sports generally, it would just decimate journalism, because now it would just be PR. If an athlete just talks to the one reporter that they are friendly with, then we're not getting journalism. We're just getting public relations. I saw that as well. I get that. I understand that. I understand that aspect of it, but I think that you have to take this particular incident in a vacuum, because it really is. There are mental health issues involved. There are other issues involved, and I think you have to take it uniquely. But I also understand that concern from journalists.
But there's extremes, though. So I think that
there are extremes. That's the
there's
point.
Extremes. Yes. We need to meet in the middle. So the problem is that tennis is the extreme. We've seen how tennis has treated Serena Williams and her sister Venus Williams. We've seen it from a young age. Naomi Osaka posted it when she posted about what was going on with her. We saw from a young age what the media tried to do with Serena Williams. Her dad has built them so headstrong that they've been able to overcome it. And I'm not saying that when you have a mental health problem that you're not headstrong. I'm saying that they've figured out how to deal with it and still excel at their sport. That doesn't make it okay. You know, what happened with Serena Williams when she gets loud and shows emotion and passion, how they try to penalize her, as opposed to when a male tennis player gets upset and shows passion. It's different. It's clearly different. The problem with all of it is everybody's thinking in extremes. What this conversation does, it makes us talk about it. So now we need to talk about what is the solution then, because we've seen Allen Iverson go through this when they're talking about practice. We all know that press conference. We've seen it. We've seen plenty of athletes time and time again go to a press conference and lose it. Even Doc Rivers last year in 2020, where they're putting a camera in front of a black man's face and asking him, how does he feel about watching other black men get murdered in the streets? How do you think he feels? He put it so beautifully, because he's a coach and he knows how to handle himself in those situations. But how do you think athletes feel?
Of course, the context behind that, the famous Allen Iverson practice monologue, is that he had just lost a childhood friend to violence. Like, that had happened that day. He had gotten that news.
That's important.
Yeah.
And I forgot to say that part. I forgot. That's the mental health part. That's very important, because when you're talking about things going on in your personal life, and, you know, and speaking of gun violence, we just had Gun Violence Awareness Day. When you see things happening in your personal life and then a camera's put in front of your face, that would be a good day for Allen Iverson to have whatever's going to happen that we create in the future. So if it's I need a mental health pass today and I'm not doing media because today I need a mental health pass. That doesn't mean that every day I'm not doing media, but that's why we need to have this conversation. We don't know what's going on in Naomi Osaka's life right now. That's true. Like she's talked about in 2018, she referenced what's happening in her past, but we don't know what's going on right now in the present. So there needs to be some type of situation where there's maybe a moderator. I understand the need for journalism. Journalism creates the media that the fans get to digest and the fans get to feel a closeness to. I get that. And I understand that whole ecosystem. It needs to be there. But if something's been in place for the existence of sports and it's never been moderated, well, then maybe it's time to update how things are done. Marshawn Lynch, I'm just here so I don't get fined. He was just trying to get ready for the Super Bowl, but they tried to tell him he had to go do media. So he answered the questions one way to let people know that, look, I don't want to hear what you have to say to me. I'm just trying to focus on my sport, my job. So a lot of people are taking it as athletes hate the media. It's not that. Athletes are trying to deal with what's going on in their life, while also trying to prepare for big moments that are going to be on display in front of the world, that's going to be judged after they do it. Just to put it in perspective, that's a lot. So I think what's happening with Naomi is maybe we do need a moderator, that now the media gets to ask their questions, but they submit their questions and the moderator asks it live. So they still get that live reaction that they want. But then if the questions aren't, let's say, the right line of questioning, then the moderator can send them something back, rephrase your question, we'll ask it later. We're not saying no media. It's saying that some media members come on there wanting violence. They chose violence, as they say on the internet. Some media members go on there and they choose violence. They don't like LeBron James. So all they want to do on that whole press conference is say rude things to LeBron James in hopes that he snaps back at them and they have something to write about. That might have to stop. That's what we're saying might need amended.
And I think you said something important, and I just want to pull it out. When a new generation and new voices come into a space, anywhere, could be any workplace, doesn't matter that it's sports, but any workplace, it is quite natural for that younger generation, the new people, the new voices, to look at the way things are happening, the way things are run, and say, do we really need to do it this way? That is natural. That is a thing, that is a dynamic that happens in all areas of life, professionally. And it's a thing that just happened here with Naomi Osaka and the French. And you can either have that conversation and try and open a dialogue and figure out, well, do we want to be progressive? Is there a way that we can improve the things that we do? Or you can crack down, which is what the French decided to do. All of which is to say, this is a natural thing. As generations come into a place, they want to know if this is the best way to do things and give them that buy-in.
You have to, because think about the new age of generation. They're gamers. They're introverts in general. Like, I think Naomi Osaka is a product of our new generation where social media and gaming and all those different things have made people more introverted. I mean, even how you date. Dating apps are a way that a lot of people meet now. Back in the day, I'm just saying, like, I met most of the people I dated in real life, in person. Like, I never did that. But it's not a bad thing that people are on dating apps. It's just the new thing. It's the normal thing now. Everything is more introverted. You meet every people more introverted. It's just different. So yeah, maybe it's time for things to kind of shift.
So, of course, we're going to continue to follow the story. Naomi's one of our favorite athletes. And we will see if this sparks a broader conversation, not just around mental health, but in the relationship between the press and athletes, in athletes having a greater voice in the way sports are run. We shall see.